All right, let's bring in defense attorney, former head prosecutor Bob Bianchi. Thank you, Bob, for being on with me. Let me ask you this. Why do you think they're talking to each other? They're both in jail. It's a year after it happened. They're even talking about, oh, it's all stupid circumstantial stuff. Shouldn't they know it's going to be used against them? I don't care what they say. It's going to be used against them like the state's trying to do right now.
Yeah, you know, Judge, I don't know the answer to your question. I mean, initially when I was listening to this, I was really surprised. I've never heard in my career, at least in the system that we have in New Jersey, where inmates are allowed to discuss things over a telephone. It just would never happen for security reasons et al. That said, as a prosecutor, and a homicide prosecutor in particularly, we would go through these telephone lines all the time and listen to conversations that individuals were having that oftentimes picked up statements and confessions or attempts to get people to try to destroy or manipulate evidence or fabricate evidence or get rid of witnesses and things of that nature. So it was not only a security risk for the prison, it helped us in order to build cases. So I would also imagine, I think lastly I have to say, these are just the anecdotal things that are going in my head when I'm listening to this, that I hear myself now as a criminal defense lawyer, and I'm sure their lawyers as well, telling them over and over and over again, well, no matter who you're speaking to, certainly not a co-defendant or a person that's a witness in a case, do not talk over these telephones. The lines are recorded, and anything you say can and will be used against you. So those are my basic thoughts, but I have strategic thoughts about these phone calls too. I just don't know if you want to go there.
Yeah, just real quickly before we have to take a break, what are the strategic thoughts about it?
I think this is really interesting because I disagree with what I hear a lot of legal analysts talking about this right now as to the value of this. This is being presented by the government for a reason. This case is now coming down to two witnesses, and that's Austin and Baker. One is testifying in favor of the prosecution for a plea deal that they got to testify, quote unquote, truthfully, which means to the government favorably for them. And the other one was allowed to plead guilty without that, which is a very, again, extraordinary thing that typically doesn't happen. And so now I believe prosecutors are using these for an ancillary reason to show that the credible people between Baker and Austin is their guy, Austin, and that her and Baker were in cahoots and they were behind the scenes and they were talking. And of course, he's got the motive to lie because of the relationship. I really think that the prosecutions are introducing this in order to bolster the credibility of their witness. But I don't think it's a good look for prosecutors either way, because if that's what they're doing, that means, you know, we always used to say when I was a prosecutor and we would have a guy like Austin testify, you know what happens, Judge, when you sleep with dogs sometimes?
Yeah,
you catch fleas.
Exactly. And I was going to say, using them to bolster maybe what they're doing strategically. I agree with you. I don't think it's a good move. I don't think it's a good look. And I also don't think there's been a lot of evidence yet saying, hey, Monica Sementilli absolutely was directly involved. Although Austin Baker did say that. A lot of that relied on Austin Christopher, a lot of that relied on what Robert Baker told him. Such a convoluted web we weave, it's hard for me to keep it all straight sometimes, Bob. Stay with us. Coming up next, the defense calls their first witness out of order. A defense witness, the first detective to arrive on the scene of Fabio Sementilli's murder. Can't wait to hear what he has to say right after this break. That's defense attorney, former head prosecutor Bob Bianchi. Bob, what is the significance, in your opinion, of this witness to the defense? He didn't do the autopsy. He's there, but he's a former detective.
Yeah, Judge, we'll have to wait and see. But I'll tell you, I don't like the look of a report bearing the name of an individual that somebody else created. That doesn't sound too good. But I will tell you, based on my experience, I've had a considerable amount of difficulty in my homicide cases working as a prosecutor and even a defense lawyer with the medical examiner's office. There is a lot of well, I mean, I'm not trying to say that everyone doesn't do it the right way, but there's a lot of ineptitude. There's a lot of guessing. There's a lot of game playing. There's a lot of pushing lines and fudging things. And I've had that problem with prosecutors when I come in and I'm like, you guys are just not doing the right thing. I just recently, I was telling your producer, had a homicide case where my client was accused for 4 years of having killed his 5-week-old baby because of a conversation that occurred between a detective like this and the medical examiner in a room where nothing's being recorded, going off on a tangent and accusing him of killing his baby when it turned out his baby died of a natural event. So I don't know whether they're going in that area, but I will say to your viewers and of course all your fans that this kind of problematic thing happens in many homicide cases. Let's see. Stay tuned.
Yeah, it could be a big problem if that's the case. Thank you, of course, Bob Bianchi. I always appreciate you coming up.
All right, folks, we're going to get you back to court in just a moment. But first, here to discuss is still defense attorney, former head prosecutor Bob Bianchi. Bob, great to see you. Thank you so much again for being with us here on the program. And I want to go back to what the defense might be doing with this witness. I mentioned to Judge Ashley that I think maybe somehow they want to undermine the testimony of Chris Austin, because I agree with you. I think a lot of this case boils down to the testimony of Chris Austin and Robert Baker if he takes the stand.
Yeah, Michael, when you were saying that, I agree completely. It could also be the pathologist that they're going over. But let's look at it this way. Whatever it is, they are obviously using the substance of what's in that document to contradict at least a major witness in their case. And I couldn't help but look at this from a tactical perspective. If I were the prosecutor sitting there and this was happening, this is brutal testimony to a prosecutor. I mean, it got to the point where personally I would not have continued. This is a lesson for the lawyers out there. Continue to go back on direct, redirect, redirect, because all you're doing is emphasizing that what's in that document must be really bad, even if the jury doesn't hear it. I've done this before. I'm waving the document and basically saying, without saying it, the judge won't let me tell you what's in here. The prosecutor's super scared about what's in here, but it's really bad, and it's your note. And what gets me in summation, of course, we're always thinking about summation, is saying that, yeah, when you have the reports that are spit shined and polished and I's dotted and T crossed and signed and supervised, it all looks pretty. But when you unravel the package and you go to the notes that were being done contemporaneous to information being given, where there wasn't, you didn't have a defendant, you didn't have a case, you didn't have a trial, something substantively changed from the note to the report is not a good look for prosecutors. So both substantively and the manner in which it was coming out in front of the jury is nicking not only the credibility of the case, but the prosecutors and police themselves.
Yeah, I think it is too, but I will say I can't understand why he didn't use that to refresh the witness's recollection and then let the witness testify, but I don't know what the pretrial motion orders were in this particular case. Stay with us, Bob. Let's keep watching. We want to go back into court. But now, remember, that was a defense witness called out of turn. So now they're back with the state witness. Again, Detective Mitzi Roberts back on the stand on direct examination.